What's up guys, this is Teddy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video, we're going to be building the login page. So we've already got identity set up. The actual infrastructure for identity is good to go, but even though the infrastructure is there, there's still some configuration that you need to do. So like I said, identity will do a lot of work for you. That's like the whole idea of ASP.NET. It's flexible. And there's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of boilerplate for you, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that you still need to do too as the developer. And the first thing that you probably need to do is you need to create a controller to actually handle the login and the logout. So we're just going to go in here, we're going to go ahead and add a controller, and we're going to call this one account controller. So go in here, we're just going to call this login and go ahead and get it set up. We'll get our view set up here as well too. And just like in every other single tutorial and every single video, we're going to have to name the folder account, and the login function name or the action result function needs to be the same name as the view. So go in here, it's going to be empty, and we'll just call this one login, just like that. And let's just go ahead and see here if we can get it to show the login just like that, and make sure that we have our actual, this is actually, it's really difficult to remember all of this. So what I do beforehand is I actually build it before and then copy it over and kind of explain things. And I think that most people do that as well too. So if you think that I'm actually coding all of this from the top of my head, I'm very sorry if that disturbed you in any way, but I build it beforehand and kind of build it on the fly. And let me see here. Then we need to do the actual post. So first, what you want to do is you always want to build your login and just have your little view first, and then you want to build the actual post for it. And just to kind of go ahead and build it out and get this infrastructure going, we're going to go action result, and let's go ahead and make this async. Let's actually not make it synchronous, because this could be a very important endpoint, and we want to go ahead and put it in the async syntax. And while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and make our login virtual or view model. So here we just want to go into our view model, of course, and then we're going to create a new class. Go in here, just call it login VM. And for the login VM, what we are going to do is going to be very simple. We're just going to have prop string, then we're going to have our username. Go down here. Then we're going to have string password, just like that. And you always want to put validation inside the view model. You very rarely ever want to have validation inside of your actual domain models. You can, and I don't think there's anything really wrong with having validation in your domain model. It can be sort of like I think it can be a design smell if you really are, if you're doing it in a production environment and you're doing a lot of it. But I think in this case, you could probably get away with it. But just for learning purposes, I'm going to go in here and actually put all this validation. And this is validation, by the way. These are called validation annotations. Kind of a cool little rhyme there. But this is actually going to set up a a lot of, or take away a lot of the pain of doing the validation. And it's going to put it in the login view model too as well. And it's going to make it look very good. And I'm actually going to rename this. I think it looks a little bit better when the convention is matching the other view models. So call that login view model. Then we're going to go back into our controller. But feel free to call it whatever you want to. It really doesn't even matter. Okay. And go in here. And we'll call this login view model. Just like that. And let's see. We're going to have to go in here and bring in our user managers. So when I first showed you guys identity, I talked a little bit about managers. Managers are going to be what you are going to see the most whenever you're doing a lot of coding in identity. Managers are going to basically provide you with all types of little extensions and all types of cool little code to make your life a lot easier when you're building these authentication controllers, and give you a lot of functionality out of the box. It's just kind of for you have to do the actual designing, and you have to set up all this infrastructure, which is kind of fun. If you like programming, it's probably pretty fun for you. Fun for me. And go in here. Then we're going to bring in our DB context. So DB context is equal to context. And for some reason, it's not finding it. Okay, never mind. It's application DB context. Okay, so we have that. Now we need to bring in a constructor and do the dependency injection for all of this. So we go in here, user manager, and we're gonna have, of course, our app user, and bring in the user manager. Then we're gonna have our sign-in manager. Pretty self-explanatory. So whenever you think manager in identity, don't think of anything too complicated. Just think of it as a nice, Microsoft recognizes that you're performing a lot of the actions, and you would probably have to code this by yourself. If we were like back in 2000, you'd have to code all of this by hand, but nowadays Microsoft knows that you're going to be doing like literally the exact same thing whenever you design a lot of this authentication. So that's why we are provided with managers. Sign-in manager, and they're really easy to bring. You just have to use dependency injection to bring them in. So we've got that, and we've got our view, and we also want to just toss in our view model. You probably don't have to do this, but I'm going to anyway. Go ahead in here, and then you can toss in the response view model just in case you reloaded this and it would bring back in all of that data. So if you went to your login and you typed in like maybe a password and you accidentally reload the page, it would hold those values for you and return them. And that's kind of the reason we do that. You don't technically you don't need this in here, but I think it's just kind of like an extra nicety. So now let's go ahead and start building the actual post mechanism. So pretty much, and you guys probably have already noticed this, is that you always have a login, which is going to be by default HTTP GET. Like just imagine that's always there. So if it's not there, so if there's nothing there and you don't specify it, this is always going to be a GET. And if you have, like I said, if you've been designing any of these .NET applications for any period of time, you'll notice that we always have a get, and we almost always have a post. Very rarely do you just have a get, or very rarely do you just have a post. They always come in tandem, and they always have the same name like that. And just, I would say that's something you definitely want to be aware of. Then let's go ahead here, got our login view model. Now, first thing is, whenever we're logging in, the first thing that you probably are going to do is go get the user from the database. So if somebody's logging in, the first thing you probably want to do is check if this person actually even exists. And let me see here. It may be better if we have this designed as an email. I think it would probably be a little bit more modern if we had, instead of this being a username, like instead of having a username, we have an email here. So let's go in here and let's call this email. And also we can go in here and we can make this required. It's equals to email address is required. So if they don't put in an email address, it will stop them and give them a nice little error message if they do not put that in there. So let's go ahead here. And I'm sure that let's actually see a good tactic or tip I can always recommend people is just hit that dot and just go in here. Look, there's already nice methods that we could utilize. And if you want, maybe you want to find it by the ID. All of that's built in there. So think of that user manager as like that. It's not, they give it a complex name, they call it a manager, but really it's just a fancy way to bring in all of these little extensions. And look how much stuff is in here. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's very powerful. And just go through there. Like I said, hit that dot and just go through there, check what's in there, and maybe have a little fun. Break something. I always tell people to don't be afraid to break stuff. Venture outside the box and make something your own. So we've already got our IntelliSense, but the IntelliSense is a little off. That's probably one of the reasons we still have jobs, is because IntelliSense can't decipher what we actually need. But it did do a decent job. So we're going to go in here. We're going to go to the user manager, and then we're going to go check password async, and we're going to go ahead. We're going to pass in. Let's see. We want to pass in that whole entire model. So what you do is you hover over this, and you can see what this function wants. If you're just unsure, if you're ever in a programming tutorial and you're just like, I don't even know what this is, just hover over it, and the Visual Studio will give you great data on what you actually need. So we need to pass in a user and we need to pass in a password, and it's going to return a bool. So if the password is correct, it's going to return true. If the password is false, it's going to return false. And we're going to go ahead in here, and we're going to toss in that password. Great. And we need to do an if check. You probably already knew that. We needed to do some type of if check with that bool. So that's kind of the reason that check password is a bool. So you can see here it's returning an asynchronous Boolean value. And one of the reasons that we do that is because you're always going to have another if check. You're always going to have more additional logic after that password check. And so if the password check is true, then we want to use the password sign in async. So we actually want to sign in. We want to bring in our sign in manager. Then we want to go in here, password sign in async. So go ahead, sign in, and then login view model, go ahead, put in that password, and let me see. Is persistent, lockout on failure. I don't even know what any of those are, so I'm just going to do false for both of those. If you don't know what it is, check the documentation, but since we're doing the video, I really don't even know what any of that is, so I'm just going to put false for those. So go down here, and if the result succeeded, what's going to happen is we're going to redirect back to the race page. So go in here, redirect to action, index, and we're gonna, this is the, let me see here, redirect to action. This is the action name, and this is the controller name. And how I knew that is, once again, I just hovered over it, and it gives you what you need right here. And pretty self-explanatory. I don't think there's any more need to explain it more than that. So basically, all of this logic is the best case scenario. This is what we want right here. But also, if our password fails, we need to have additional logic. And the way that we do that is, I'm just going to go in here. I am going to use temp data. This isn't the best. Really, the best way to do this would to be go in here and do login view model and password. And we would set some type of bool here. So we would have like password is correct, something like that. But I am just, since this is just a really small app, I'm just going to use temp data. But this isn't, temp data is regarded as kind of like a design smell. If you're using temp data too much and you're putting, you're using temp data for all types of very complicated logic, that's going to be a design smell. But since this is a very small app, we will just use temp data for now. And if it is incorrect, return the view and return it with that login view model. And we also need, so if the user is not in there, this right here is if there is a user. So this, if this code executes in here, user is found, check password. And this down here is password is incorrect. And this is password correct, sign in. And then this here, this error handling that I'm about to add is, so we'll go error, wrong credentials, please try again. So we're going to go in here. So go in here and I'm going to go return this. And then this is going to be user not found. And relatively, it's a little complex. I'm not going to act like it's some super easy thing to understand, but that's the gist of it. There's more that you can do. There's infinite layers of complexity that you could add to it, but just for this case, we're going to use that. So let's go ahead and see if we can actually get this page to render. And if we can get it to render, then we'll actually start building the view. So we're going to go in here, and we just called it the login. So we have login like that. And we need to put the action name. So we need account right there. And it works. Looking good. Now let's go ahead and let's build out the view. My dog just went crazy when I said looking good. Okay, so we're gonna go in here and we're gonna bring, of course, we're going to bring in our view model. So we have our run group web app, then we have view model, and let's go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. So here, view models. Just like that. Hopefully it works, and it does work. And our model is going to be login view model. Great. Then go in here and let's go ahead up here. And we're going to call this title. This is going to be the title of our web page. And we will call this just login. Sweet. So I'm just going to go ahead and toss this code in here and explain it to you. This is more of a This is more of a C# course, and it's probably better if I just go through and explain this to you. And I actually spelled that wrong. So go into the login view model and call this email address and not just email. Then let's go ahead and go back because we were getting some validation errors, and I'm literally just going to go through line by line and explain. So we have our H4, which is just a aesthetically pleasing. We have this temp data error. So if the temp data error is not equal to null, it's going to show that error message in a nice. So if you're logging in and you need to you need to get some type of validation back. If somebody clicks the login button and it doesn't actually work, they're not going to know, and you need that validation there. Otherwise, once again, they're not going to know, and they're just going to leave your app and be pissed off, which rightfully so. The next thing is we have our form, we have our ASP.NET action, and that is going over to our account controller. So it's not really pivotal that we type this out. It's more pivotal that you understand kind of like what's going on, and it's going to post. Always realize that when you're in a form, you are posting. Whenever you see form, just always think post. Form equals post. And I have no idea why I just did that. That does not need to be there. Just remember, form post. Whenever you have this form ASP.NET action, this is the endpoint that is actually going to hit. And let's actually, I'm sorry, I'm like really thirsty and I think my throat's like, but so it's going to post to this. It's going to go in through the login view model, and we actually have an error here. So let's go ahead from where we changed that. That needs to be an email address, not just email. And I'm going to go ahead, set that breakpoint. Let's fire it up, and I'm just going to kind of explain things one by one. And I've totally forgot something. We need to add a link so that we can actually get to the login web page. So what we want to do is go into our views, and we want to go into our master layout page. So we go into shared, we go into our layout, and then let's see, need to find this HTML that I have. I have some HTML laying around. So go in here, and go in to here. See if we can get this to Great. So we have our login and we have our email address. So I'm just going to type in gibberish and let's see what happens. Okay, great. So we've triggered our breakpoint. Go in here, you see that it's passed into our login view model. So the reason that we use view models is that we could just hand code this. We could just go string password, and we could totally do without this view model. We could do string password, username, but we don't want to do that because the login view model gives us a nice little briefcase. I call an object almost like a briefcase, or it's like the drawer. It's like a tool drawer. Think of it like a drawer. You can open up little drawers, you can pull out data, and instead of having to have your data, instead of having all your tools and your tool, your wrench and your hammer laying all over the place, you have a toolbox so that you can have a nice little neat place to put all of your objects or all of your strings and all of your stuff. So think of the login view model as like a little toolbox that you can put stuff in instead of having to go in here manually and type in the string email and string password. Instead of having that, we can just have a nice little box that we can put that in. And that's what it does for us. It's like a nice little, if you debug here, you have a nice little box to put all that stuff in. And then we step through here. Is the model state valid? So let's go in here. The model state is in fact valid. So the model state is a device. I think it's like a device. It's a thing that's built into ASP.NET that checks to make sure that this login view is actually correct. So if this is not correct, and maybe you pass in a number into the email address, or you pass in some type of incorrect data. So right here, we specified that the email address has to be a string. And if you passed in just an int, the model state would be invalid, and it would just return the view, and it would return our error. But it's not. It is correct, which is good. And then what the next thing it's going to do is it's going to find this user. So what it's going to do is it's going to go to our database. It's going to check if the user is there, but the user is not there. So what's going to happen? It's going to show that it has wrong credentials, and then it's going to return a view. Sorry, wrong credentials. But let me see here. We actually created some users in our seed. So, and if you didn't do the seed, that's okay, because I'm going to be doing the register next. But for the seed, let me see here. I think we actually created a user here. So let's see what we got. And this is totally a fictitious name here. So it's going to be Teddy Smith Developer. And what was our password? Coding at 1234 question mark. So we're going to go in here. We're going to type in this. Go here. And then, let me see. So then we go in here. We're going to put in this. We're going to see if this works. So we go down here. Our model state is valid. Then we go to our user. It's going to go check. Did we get a user? We got a user back. Awesome. Let's see what's actually in here. So it's going to return all, look at all that awesome data that it's returning back. Oh, I love programming. That was a little weird. Okay. So we've got our user back, and then we're going to go in here, and then it did find the user. So now we need to check, is the password correct? Is it? The password is correct. Thank God. I was going to freak out because it said false there. So all of these, we didn't have to code any of this. We have our user, Microsoft's doing all the work for us. Thank you, Microsoft. So our password check is correct. Then what's going to happen is it's going to actually log in the user. And it did succeed. and my phone is going crazy. So then it's going to redirect us back to the races page, and we are officially logged in, and it stored a cookie for us. So my camera is about to die, and I'm going to have to split these videos up and do the register in the next video, but we're already off to a good start. We've got our login. We've already got it tested. It's looking good, and we'll work on the register next. Anyways, hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching.